and welcome back to Explore with NTV. I'm Nadira and I hope that you're all well and are ready to explore a new educational topic. And so Tasbi will be explaining what today's topic is about.
Hello friends and happy Mother's Day! And also this Monday was International Women's Day. So yes, and today's topic is called Mother's Day and International Women's Day, and we're going to be talking about women's rights and how you can celebrate Mother's Day.
Yeah, and it's actually really nice that Mother's Day and International Women's Day are within the same week, so it's a week filled with celebrations about women.
Yeah. And also, you can also make a Mother's Day card or make something for your mother.
Yeah.
And it will be really nice. And also, you shouldn't buy a card, but you can if you want to. But if you make it by yourself, then it's unique.
Yeah, that's true. And so another thing that's also important to remember is the fact that International Women's Day doesn't discredit the struggles or any of the undermine any of the things that men do, but it is just a day to celebrate women and their struggles, their achievements, and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's very telling because there's not only Mother's Day, but there's also Father's Day. So, but today obviously we're going to be discussing Mother's Day, right?
Yes, and International Women's Day.
Yeah, and so let's talk about Flora. Hi, Flora.
Hi, everyone.
So, Flora, how are you?
I'm great.
Are you excited to learn about International Women's Day and Mother's Day?
Yes.
And so do you have a message to any of the girls or women that are watching today's episode?
Yes. We're all unique and that's good. And we have our own rights as well.
Yeah.
So, who are some of the women or girls that you love in your life? Well, you two, because you're very inspiring to me. Thank you, Flora. What is the best part about being a girl? The best part is that you can look beautiful and also be helpful. And also men can be helpful as well. Would you call yourself a feminist? No, I wouldn't, because we should always have an equality between men and women.
Yeah. And so let's hear a little bit more about you, Tasbi. How do you celebrate Mother's Day with your mum?
Well, I celebrate Mother's Day with my mum by making a card, like I said, and doing some fun things with her.
Oh, what types of fun things?
Well, I'd say I would cook with her and play with her.
Oh.
Yeah, so what about you, Nadira?
I would say a very similar thing. I really enjoy making a card for my mum and spending a lot of time with her. It's really nice that Mother's Day is always on a Sunday because then, you know, they're not working and so I can spend as much time as I can with my mum.
Yeah, it's really nice to spend time with your mum and do activities.
So what traits about your mum do you really like?
Well, she's helpful and kind, and I really like that.
Yeah.
So how about you, Nadira?
I would say my mum is very compassionate and she's also very empathetic. I think she really understands people's emotions and I think she's helped me out a lot because of that. And so how does your mum inspire you?
Well, she inspires me because she's very dedicated. Yeah. So what about you, Nadira?
I would say that my mum is very resilient. I think that sometimes struggles can come her way. Like for instance, she recently got hurt at work and she cracked one of her teeth. But actually she has been very resilient and went straight back to work and she's always very dedicated, just like your mum. So I think those are traits that are very inspirational. And so what are some of the activities that you really enjoy doing with your mum?
Well, like I said, cooking and going out with her.
Oh.
Yeah. And like going to fruit farms and picking fruit.
Oh, that's really nice. You do like a lot of nice outdoor things with your mum.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Nadira?
I would say something that I've done with my mum throughout my childhood and even to this day is I love giving her massages. She always likes me giving her a hand massage or a leg massage or giving her back massage. So I think those are things that I really enjoy doing with my mum.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young, because I was a lot smaller, I weighed less, I could like walk on her back, and she really loved it when I did that.
Yeah, that was same with me.
Oh.
Well, not when I didn't walk on her back. I massaged her.
Yeah. And so, do you have a fun or nice memory about your mum?
Well, when I was little, she always took videos of me like taking a bath and stuff.
Oh, I guess that's really nice because then you get to remember and look back at those videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your opinion, Nadira?
I would say something that I really love about my mum and the things that I remember her doing is that she always loves singing and dancing, and sometimes just randomly around the house I would see her very confidently singing and dancing, and it would always make the rest of my family laugh. So I think that's really nice.
That also proves that she makes you smile.
Yeah, I think making each other smile, making each other laugh is always a really nice, fun memory.
Yeah.
And so let's move on to talking more about the history and the more educational side of International Women's Day and Mother's Day. So do you firstly know the definition of feminism and gender equality?
Well, it means that like men and women are like, for example, if they do the same job, they get the same amount of money.
Yeah, so this idea of opportunities always being equal and people always having the same access to certain things. And so, do you remember the exact date that International Women's Day was first celebrated and Mother's Day was first celebrated?
Well, yes, actually. So, International Women's Day was celebrated on 1911. And yeah.
And actually, yeah, both of them were celebrated first close to the early 20th century. So they're quite fairly recent, actually. International Women's Day was first founded in 1911, and so if we think about it now, it's 2021, so it's actually 110 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What happened during the first wave of feminism?
So the first wave of feminism was all about voting, and so women didn't have the right to vote at the time, unfortunately, and so they were saying that that was extremely unfair. How could you run a society without including half of the population's opinion? You know, that's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were saying that that's unfair and that we deserve the right to vote so that we can contribute to our society and make a meaningful impact just like how the men do.
Yeah. Because women and men are on the same level like us.
Yeah. And so do you know why it's important to celebrate International Women's Day and Mother's Day?
Well, yes, it is because, firstly, because of Mother's Day, it's important to celebrate it because your mothers do a lot for you, like giving birth to you. So that's why.
Yeah.
And International Women's Day because it's good to celebrate women's rights. Okay, so, and what happened during the second wave of feminism?
So the second wave of feminism is a bit different from the first in the sense that it mainly focused on the economic inequalities of men and women. And so the second wave of feminism was after the war, and that meant that there was a scarcity in jobs because lots of men went to war, and that meant that women started entering the workforce. And as a result of that, when women started working, they realized that there's so many inequalities. For instance, they didn't get paid the same, or that they were undermined in their work, or put into lower positions, or different types of jobs were considered feminine and different types of jobs considered masculine. And these types of things were what women were working on improving in the second wave of feminism.
Yeah.
And do you know the history behind Mother's Day?
Well, Mother's Day is mostly the history of it is that Mother's Day is obviously very interesting. It's the story when Anna Jarvis held a memorial for her mother at St. Andrew's Methodist Church.
And so it's quite funny how obviously the first ever time we ever celebrated Mother's Day was about a woman who was very inspired by her mum and all the things that she did, and that now that was a memorial for her mum, you know. It was kind of like celebrating other mums as well as her mum.
Yeah. So, what is happening in the current third wave of feminism?
So in the current third wave of feminism, obviously we still talk about the economic and political inequalities, but I would say that the third wave of feminism mainly focuses on things like the cultural and social inequalities that women face. So it's a bit more about things like the way in which women and men interact with one another, and how that is still perpetuated through like stereotypes, for instance, and how we treat and the language that we use to describe men and women. Like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. And do you know any famous feminists, or can you name any famous feminists that you know?
Yes, like Oprah.
Oprah, yeah, she's a good example.
Yeah, and she's so famous that you don't even have to say her surname.
Yeah, wow. And she's also a TV presenter, and she's very famous for that. And I believe that she grew up in poverty, and now she's probably one of the most well-known women on the planet.
Yeah.
So it's very amazing. She's very inspirational, I think.
What is the history of International Women's Day?
So like I said earlier, International Women's Day was founded 110 years ago, and that was to symbolize and to also encourage other women to take action in the first wave of feminism, in the sense that they thought that if you have a whole day dedicated to women, then more women would feel encouraged and empowered to also take action and then help tackle and break down all of the current barriers that were affecting women at the time.
Yeah, and that also helps us get inspired by them, the people who fought in the first wave of feminism.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to always look back on the history. And so that is all that we have for this first segment, and we'll see you after the break. Bye everyone!
Bye! Hello friends, and welcome back in the break. In this segment we normally read books, so let's start.
But before we read a book, we have something to show everyone. And so we have a few craft ideas that you can do. So here is a little treasure chest that I made for my mum when I was very young, and I just coloured it in, and I thought that it would be a cute gift for her. And she keeps a few like pins and things like that inside this little chest.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Yeah, and there's another one over there. Do you want to hold it, Tasfi?
Yeah, so this butterfly one.
Yeah, it's like a coin holder. Yeah, and I think it's really cute. It's like a piggy bank. Yeah. And I made that for my mum a very long time ago, and she still kept it because obviously I made it, so it was nice.
Yeah, and it's more like a butterfly bank.
Yeah, it is like a butterfly bank.
And I also made a card, and my front cover, so I got another piece of paper and put it in a heart shape, and inside I wrote, "I love you, Mummy."
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. And also, another idea that you can give your mum, inside your card you can like write an acrostic poem with her name.
Ooh, that's a really good idea, Tasfi.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so what book would you like to read?
I would like to read this book first. So this is actually a notebook, and it contains quite a few poems about Mother's Day. So let's have a read. So this poem is called I Love You, Mum, and it's by Jessica Ashton. The way I feel I can't explain, for the gratitude inside, for all the days and all the nights you spent right by my side, for every hug and every kiss to send me on my way, for always putting me to bed to prepare me for another day. For loving me through the hurt and pain that comes my way, for holding me so tight that I can barely breathe, for never letting go of hope you hold for my life, for keeping me so close to your heart all this time, for yelling at me when I'm out of place, for telling me the truth, for forgiving me for what I say, because I know it hurts. So now I say what I feel at this time of day, that Mum, I love you all the time, so happy Mother's Day. And I feel like that poem is really nice because it obviously highlights some of the struggles that you have with your mum, but at the same time, the key thing is that you love her and that she loves you.
Yeah, and the things that your mum does for you.
Yeah. So the next poem is called Mother's Day, and it's by Carol Matthews. So, a mother loves right from the start. She holds her baby close to her heart. The bond that grows will never falter. Her love is so strong that it will never alter. A mother gives never-ending love. She never feels that she has given enough. For you, she will always do her best, constantly working with no time to rest. A mother is there when things go wrong, always there for when we need her, gently wipes our tears when we shed a tear. So on this day, shower your mother with love. Gifts and presents are nice, but not enough. Give your mother a day to have some peace of mind. Be gentle, be good, be helpful, be kind. Happy Mother's Day. I think that's a nice poem.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
And the final poem is called To My Dearest Mother, and it's by Kristen Rolander. My mother is a special part of all that's cherished in my heart. She is my pearl, my soul, my mate. She is the one that makes my life great. She is an angel without wings who makes life special with the littlest of things. Whenever I am in need of love, she is there from the heavens above. Whenever I am in need of a shoulder, there's no one as devoted as my mother. Her presence and her love are always there. Everything in her nature is only to care. With every soft hug and kiss, the world seems more beautiful and blessed. I'm sorry for all the times I caused you pain, but after these brief storms, my love still remains. I love you so much. I love you forever. I wrote your name in my heart, and it will stay there forever and ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like these poems. I think it's always really nice to look at poems to see how you feel, and they always express a lot about feelings, don't they?
Yeah.
And so my next book that I would like to read is this book, and we've seen this book before. It's called Children's British History Encyclopedia. And so let's have a bit of a read about some of the women's rights movements. So, votes for women. The Reform Acts in the 19th century had given the vote of an increasing number of men, but not for women. From the 1860s onwards, women began to campaign peacefully to be allowed to vote. These women were known as suffragists, and it comes from the word suffrage, which means to vote. In 1903, Amelia Pankhurst and her daughters, Christabel and Sylvia, decided that peaceful means were not sufficient. They set up the Women's Social and Political Union, or the WSPU, aiming to use direct militant action to get publicity. Their campaign started in 1905, when Christabel and other members of the WSPU, Anna Kennedy especially, shouted suffrage slogans at meetings where there was a foreign secretary. They were arrested multiple times and imprisoned. The militant campaigns of the WSPU became known as the suffragettes. The suffragettes continued their campaign until there was an outbreak of war in 1914. They were often arrested and badly treated by the police. In prison, some suffragettes went on hunger strikes and were forcibly fed. If they became too ill to stay in prison, they were released, but then re-arrested once they had recovered. During World War I, the suffragettes stopped their violent actions to engage in the war of work. Women took men's places in the industry, and in 1918, they were also given the right to vote. Many women campaigned peacefully for the vote and disapproved of the violent militant methods used by the WSPU. Women were eventually given the right to vote in 2 stages, in 1918 and in 1928. So that's very interesting, isn't it? There was a lot of tension between women and the government trying to be able to, secure women's rights at the time. There was lots of different ways of doing it. Some people did it violently, some people did it peacefully.
Yeah.
And so what book would you like to read, Tasbih?
I'd like to read this book.
Oh.
Okay. So, Alec Work, a supermodel. Once upon a time there was a girl named Alec who would stop by a mango tree to get a snack on her way from school. In Alec's village there was no running water nor electricity. She had to walk to a well for drinking water, but she and her family lived a simple and happy life. Then a terrible war broke out and Alec's life changed forever. As warning sirens wailed over their village, Alec and her family had to run away from the fighting. There was the rainy season. The river had flooded. The bridges across it were under water, and Alec could not swim. She was terrified of drowning, but her mum helped her to cross safely to the other side. Along the way, Alec's mum traded packets of salt for food and passports because they didn't have any money. They managed to escape from the war and made their way to London. One day she was in a park when a talent scout from a famous modeling agency approached her. He wanted to recruit Alec as a model. Alec's mother did not want to hear about it, but the agent persisted, and she finally agreed. Alec looked so different from any other model that she instantly became a sensation. Alec wants every girl on the planet to know, you are beautiful. It's okay to be quirky. It's fine to be shy. You don't have to go with the crowd.
Ooh.
Yeah. And another person that I'm going to read about is Anne Maconsky. She was an inventor.
Ooh.
Once there was a girl who couldn't study when it was dark because her house didn't have electricity. One day her friend Anne came to visit, and together they talked about the issue. Anne was great at building things, and she was especially passionate about transistors, devices that regulate the flow of electric current. What if I could invent a flashlight that is powered by your body?
Wow.
Anne asked her friend. After all, our bodies give off lots of energy in the form of heat. The girls got very excited. Just think of how many people could have electricity if this worked. Anne was just 15 years old, but she already had a lot of experience taking things apart and putting them back together. So she started to work on this mysterious new flashlight. She called it the hollow flashlight because she built it using a hollow aluminum tube. When she presented it to the Google Science Fair, she won the first prize. It's the first flashlight that doesn't need batteries, wind or sun, just body heat. Today, Anne is considered one of the most promising inventors of our time. Her dream is to make hollow flashlights available for free to everyone in the world who can't afford electricity. I like the idea of using technology to make the world a better place and to keep our environment clean, she always says.
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay, so another one person is Serena Cruz. Once there was a girl who didn't want to make tortillas when her father told her that women can only make tortillas and children. She burst into tears and promised to show him that it wasn't true. You can leave this house, but don't expect a single cent from me, he told her. Yusruna started out by selling chewing gum and fruit on the street to pay for her studies. She got a degree in accounting and came back home with a job as a teacher. She started to teach young Indian girls like herself, so they could also find the strength and resources to build their own lives. One day she decided to run for mayor of her town. She won many votes, but despite that, the townsmen cancelled the election. A woman as a mayor? Don't be ridiculous, they said, furious. If Swaruna started to work even harder, she founded an organization called QUIEGO to help India's women fight for their rights. Their symbol was a white lily. Wherever I go, I take this flower to remind people that injustice in women are exactly like that. Natural, beautiful, and resilient, Yusrina said.
Thank you so much for reading that, Tasbih.
You're welcome. So, now it's the end of this segment. So, see you after the break. Bye!
Hi everyone, and welcome back from the break. And so in this third and final segment, we have a wonderful guest with us, and her name is Maud. So hi Maud!
Hi everyone!
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
And so we would love to get to know you a bit better, and we have a few questions prepared for you. And so firstly, we'd like to know, how old are you?
I'm 48.
Wow.
And so, Tasbih?
How have you been dealing lockdown?
Well, I try not to think too far ahead. When I'm going out for a long run, I tend not to think at the start of how far I've got to go, but I just think, I'll run 1 mile, then I'll run the next mile. And soon you've got through a good chunk of it, and the task ahead seems a bit smaller and more manageable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the lockdowns have been really hard because we've not always known how long we've got to get through. So I've tried to live in the moment and just find little things every day to keep me going, just little things to look forward to. For us in my family, the last few weeks have been really, really hard because my sister died suddenly at the end of January. And it's been really, really tough for us to keep going with the grief on top of that and without being able to see our family and friends in person. So obviously we've kept in touch on the phone and through email and social media, but you really miss just being able to hug each other.
Yeah. It's obviously been a very difficult time for everyone during lockdown, especially since we don't know how long it will last, so I definitely agree.
Yeah, me too.
And what are some of the things that you like to do in your free time?
Well, I have two main hobbies. I go running and I play music. So I'm a member of a local running club. And I've run over 30 marathons, over 250 parkruns, and quite a few ultra marathons, which is anything that's further than 26 miles. I mean, obviously in the lockdown, I've mostly been running by myself, but the club has organised various virtual challenges, which keeps us feeling connected, even when we can't see each other. And on the music side, I play several instruments, mostly cello, violin, and trombone. And normally I would enjoy giving concerts and playing music with other people in orchestras and smaller groups. But obviously that's not really been possible recently, so I'm really looking forward to when that starts up again.
Yeah, I think it's really inspirational that you run so many marathons. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
Can you describe your family for us?
I live with my husband, Peter, and we have 2 sons. Gregor is 19 and Stuart is 18. And we have a dog called Stevie, who is absolutely at the heart of our family. And Peter and I got married when we were quite young, and we've now been married for 26 years. My mum and my stepdad also have a dog. They've got a 3-month-old puppy called Ziggy, who I haven't been able to meet yet because of the lockdown, so I'm really looking forward to that. Sadly, I no longer have any siblings after the death of my sister. But I have lots of uncles and aunts and cousins because my mum had 5 brothers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and how would you normally celebrate Mother's Day with your family?
We don't actually normally make much of a big deal of it. You know, I think it's nice to celebrate your mum every day rather than just on one day a year.
Yeah,
appreciate what she does day in, day out. I think, you know, sometimes dads get all the glory because they swan in and do the fun things, whereas the moms are the ones that put in the spade work every day. So, yeah. Obviously, this year is going to be really, really difficult because more than ever I want to spend time with my mum, but I can't visit her because we're not local.
Oh, okay.
So lockdown rules don't allow me to go. As for my own sons, well, I'm not holding my breath.
Oh. And how has your experience of motherhood changed as your sons have grown up?
Well, it changes gradually over the years. My 2 boys are just a year apart in age, so in the early days it was pretty intense and you don't get a moment to yourself. You don't even get to go to the toilet by yourself. And you know, it can actually be quite isolating because it can be quite hard to get out and meet other parents. But then when your kids start going to school, you start feeling more connected and you meet the other mums and dads at the school gates and your kids start to build their own social lives, which is really lovely. And my boys are young, well, they're young men now, they're not even boys anymore. But, you know, that doesn't mean that your job as a parent is over. You know, they still need you. You know, you don't suddenly become an adult overnight when you turn 18.
Yeah. I feel like we always need our mothers by our sides, even if we're adults as well. So yeah, I think the role of a mum or a dad never goes.
Yeah,
I think so, but obviously when your children are adults, it's much more a two-way relationship. You know, they help us as well as us helping them, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's true.
What things do you do with your family?
Well, my 2 boys are very, very different, and you know they don't actually have very many interests in common. So it's not that common that all 4 of us do something together, but we often do things in pairs. You know, I will often go out cycling with Stuart. That's one of the things that he loves doing. And Gregor and I often walk the dog together, and we also play music together. Gregor he's at university studying music, and he plays the piano.
Oh. And so, what is something that you are really grateful for about your family?
My mother is, you know, a hero of mine. You know, she's a strong, compassionate, and independent woman, and always has been a role model for me. And I'm fiercely loyal to her, all the more so after the death of my sister. You know, I'm also really grateful for my husband and my sons. We have a very strong family unit, and I like to think we look after each other when in the tough times and as well as in the good times.
Do you have any more questions, Sosby?
Yes. Can you describe a recent fun memory you have had with your family?
Well, obviously there's not been a lot of fun to be had during the lockdown, but I'll tell you about the last time we went on holiday together, all 4 of us, when we went to North Wales. We took the dog with us, and we did some really good fun things, like we went on rib boats and zip wires, and we also had some really nice meals out together, and we went for some nice walks. Walking along the beach with the dog was great because it was the first time he'd seen the sea.
So, in your opinion, what are the best parts about being a mum?
It's really, really lovely seeing your children growing up from babies to toddlers to primary school children, secondary school children, and now they're growing up into young men, intelligent, thoughtful and compassionate young men. And I've been really, really proud of them when life has thrown up some challenges and they find ways to overcome them. And I love it when they make me laugh, and they're both really good company in very, very different ways.
Yeah, I always feel like each sibling has a very unique relationship with their parents, and it's always quite different. So I do think I agree. I do think that as well.
Yeah, you might normally play with your mother or read stories with her.
Yeah, because obviously all of the siblings would have different personalities and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you so much, Maud, for answering some of our personal questions towards you and allowing us to get to know you a bit better. And so we would like to ask you a few more questions about your thoughts on feminism. And so do you consider yourself a feminist?
Absolutely, of course. There's still a huge amount of inequality and prejudice in the world, and we all need to stand up and challenge that.
So who are some women that inspire you?
Top of the list, I would put my own mother, Anna. As for famous women, it's been really encouraging how many women political leaders we have at the moment. For example, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, and Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, and Kamala Harris in the United States. And what those women have brought to the table in terms of leadership, I think is going to force the men to up their game. And I love watching sport, and some of the women in sport who fought for equality would include Catherine Switzer in athletics, who I'm very lucky to have met in person. In tennis, I'd name Billie Jean King and Serena Williams, and in football, Megan Rapinoe. And more generally, a couple of very young women who've inspired me are the campaigners Malala Yousafzai and Greta Thunberg. And to see young women like that standing up fearlessly for what they believe in gives me a lot of hope for the future.
So, do you think there will be a true gender equality in the future?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist, but to be honest, there's a long way to go. And one of the main stumbling blocks to gender equality is raising children. And as long as people see that as a women's issue, true equality is not going to happen. So one of the main ways that we can all benefit from a more equal society, men will benefit from this as much as women, is if we allow men to take a much more equal role in bringing up families. And I think it's really important that we move away from narrow ideas of what it means to be a girl or to be a boy, and keep everybody's options open to find their own way. And it doesn't mean that men and women have to be the same as each other. We just have to, have equal opportunities.
And how would you think you should teach your children, or how should one person teach their children about feminism and about women's equality and rights?
I think children need to know that women and girls used to have far fewer rights than they have done today, and feminists across the generations have fought for equal rights, and gradually, bit by bit, things have improved. And
And so now it's time for our quiz, right, Crispy? And so we will be asking you some multiple choice quiz questions all about Mother's Day, feminism, and women's rights. And so the first question is, how did the suffragettes protest when they were in prison? Did they break the cell windows, or write letters to the Prime Minister, or did they go on a hunger strike?
They certainly went on hunger strike. They probably also wrote letters, but they definitely went on hunger strike.
Yeah, that's correct. So I would say probably the most famous thing that they did was definitely go on hunger strike.
So, the Representation of the People Act 1918 also gave the vote to some women. And what age of women did they give this to? Aged over 21, aged over 28, or aged over 30?
I think it was over 30.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's right. They first gave it to women aged over 30, but I do think that they only did that to make the women's rights movement feel like as though they didn't need to do as much because there's already women voting, but actuality, it was kind of hiding the fact that, you know, the main issue is that all women should deserve the right to vote, right?
Yeah.
And so, who did Sylvia Pankhurst credit with the winning of the vote for women? Was it the working class socialist women, her own mother, or the soldiers in the First World War?
I would think it's the working class socialist women.
Yeah, that's right. So as well as the fact that her mum also contributed to the women's rights movement, she was very adamant on congratulating all women for the fact that they contributed.
Which of the following feminists gave a UN speech about the importance of feminism? Option 1, Emma Watson. Option 2, Emma Stone. Option 3, Maya Angelou.
I think that's Emma Watson.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. It was a very recent, or fairly recent event in the, I guess, in the history of feminism. And so now we move on to some of the questions about Mother's Day. How many Mother's Day cards are always sent on Mother's Day each year approximately? Is it 25 million, 30 million, or 40 million?
I have to say I've got absolutely no idea, so I'll go for the middle one.
Oh, 30 million. Yeah, that's right. And do you have the final question, Tasbih?
Sure. Which of the following cakes are most traditionally associated with Mothering Sunday? Seminole cake, Victoria sponge cake, or just sponge cake?
To be honest, I didn't actually know there was a particular cake associated with Mother's Day, but I think not Seminole cake because that's an Easter thing rather than a Mother's Day, so I'll go with the Victoria sponge because it's a favourite of mine.
Oh, it's actually the Seminole cake, and that's because of the fact that Mothering Sunday is often associated with Christianity and when Lent happens. But then obviously Mother's Day kind of formed out of Mothering Sunday. And so thank you so much for your contributions to the quiz and also your interview, and I really enjoyed this episode and learning a lot about feminism and women's rights as well as Mother's Day. So that's all that we have for this episode. So bye everyone!
Bye! See you
Bye.
later.